and his zeal to do the work of God led to the destruction of others. It's good to have zeal, but it's even better to have informed knowledge on how to use that zeal, because then we're able to truly touch God's people. And it's found in his word. In his word. Let's move on, point 3. When it comes to worship, we need to make sure that we do not become overly familiar with the things of God. You know, what's interesting is when you think about where the Ark of the Covenant was, it was in a man's house named Abinadab, right? Abinadab. And it had been in his house nearly 40 years at this stage, right? If it had been in his house for nearly 40 years, he was able to understand the power and the passion of what the Ark meant, right? Something with you understand it, right? He understood. It had been in his house. But you know who else grew up in his house? A man by the name of Uzzah. Grew up in his house. And as he grew up in his house, he saw what the Ark of the Covenant meant. He understood the power that was behind the Ark of the Covenant. The problem is that it had been with him so long that what happened was he forgot about the power that it possessed. He forgot about what it meant to be in his presence, and he got so overfamiliar with him that it became just a wooden box or a piece of furniture that was sitting in the corner. You know, we do that sometimes when it comes to God, right? We've been saved for so long, and before you know it, after being saved for long, we just assume that God's going to show up. We don't even bother to pray about it anymore. Because we just assume that God is going to show up. We don't take time. Oh, I done read that scripture again. I done read it. Why got to read it again? I understand what it says. You know, I told you I started out this scripture, right? And I said, I had a plan while I was going with it. God said, no, this is about worship. That wasn't where you was going. As many times as I read it, have preached on it, God said, no. I don't need you to go there. It's about worship. Teach these people that this is about worship. We get so over-familiar sometimes with God that we forget all about it. We leave him as a second, third, fourth option after we talk to our friends and everybody else. And so that's what happened with him, is it became a piece of furniture that resided in a corner of his house. Got a little bit of dust on it. You know what? We do the same thing with God. We get so familiar with him, over familiar with him, or under familiar with him, that what happens is we decide when we need him, we dust him off. When time gets home, we dust him off, pull him out of the closet. Because we just assume that because I accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior of my life, that he's going to be there. We just assume that despite my actions and my faults, he's going to forgive me because he's an all-forgiving God. And we become too familiar with him. God says, I just want you to worship me because I'm with you. I see what you're doing because I'm right here with you. You accepted me as Lord and Savior in your heart. I'm right here with you. Don't become familiar with me. Make me a part of you. Make me a part of you. Make me a part of you.
Amen.
We're living at a time when we become too familiar with God. And we think that we worship him in different ways, man. Yeah, we're going to sing 3 fast songs, and then all of a sudden we're going to move on to a slow song. And I done worship him. Ooh, check. I can go home now. I done cross off the list. I done go home now. I done got enough God in me this week. I went to church.
Right.
God says, I'm with you all the time. It ain't about dusting me off. It's about understanding I'm right here with you, and I'm worshiping, and I need you to worship me every step of the way. Don't get so familiar with me that you just assume that I'm going to be around. You think about it. We don't like to deal with folk that call us every time they need us. But we'll do the same thing to God.
Amen.
All of a sudden, time gets hard. They say, hey, can I? We do the exact same thing to God.
Right.
He says, don't become so familiar. And you know, I looked at that, something like, man, that sign on my forehead says, call me when your money is worth. And I'm sure God says, he says, I ain't heard from them all week long.
Amen.
Why all of a sudden and now they calling me now. And we expect him to move because he's God. He says, look, he says, you know what? We need not get so over familiar with God that we treat him like he just won't be there. Like all of a sudden, it just don't work out. I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to move on to the last point. I can't see my clock, so I don't even know where I am. But that's okay because I just looked at my watch. Point number 4. Point number 4. Don't act like God needs us.
Wow.
Don't act like God needs us. You know, when you read through that scripture, it says that the oxen stumbled, right? It never says that the ark proceeded to fall off the cart. It never even says that the oxen even fell. It said, it just says that the oxen stumbled, and what does it do? He reached out his hand to study the ark. Reached out his hand to study the ark. He's a man who grew up in the presence of God, but got so familiar with God that he felt like God needed him to do his job. You think God didn't know that that cart was stumbling? He's an all-present, all-knowing God.
Yes, he is.
He knew that the oxen stumbled before the oxen knew that he was going to stumble. And before you know it, he put his hands on it. You know what? We sometimes get so caught up in who we are and what we have and what we think we can do, that what we do is we think that God needs us. But God shared with me, he said, you know what? He said, make sure you let them know. I don't need them to give. I don't need them to sing that song of praise and worship. He said, you know what? I don't need them to come to church. I don't need them to be out there feeding the homeless. He said, what I need is, I need their heart. Because when I have their heart, you know what that says is? It says that it connects with him, and then all those things become necessary. Those things become, they become secondary because we're doing it from a heart. It's not because God needs me. It's because my heart is lined up with him. And before you know it, he's pushing things through me. And before you know it, it becomes a joy. That's why he says, you know what, hey, don't get weary in well doing. People get weary in well doing when they begin to think about what they're doing. But when the heart begins to kick in, which is what we use to worship God, what happens is I can't get tired because I'm running. Yes, I'm running for the Lord. I'm running. Because what happens is we don't get tired when we're working for the Lord. We get tired when we're doing it in our own way. He says, I don't need you to do that stuff. I don't need you to do all that stuff. I don't need you to show up to church every Sunday. I want you to do it because your heart is committed to me. And you understand who I am and what it is that I've done for you. I want you to understand the provisions that I make for you. I want you to understand the doors that I open up for you. I understand the situations that I placed you in. And I want you to understand that there's a plan upon your life that you don't even know about. He says, when you serve me with your heart and you understand that it ain't about you, it's about me. He says, then you begin to see the plan of God and the doors begin to open up. And he says, don't think it's about you and me needing you. It's about you or us needing him. It's about us needing him. God says, hey, make sure that you act like God needs you. Look, at the end of the day, as I always close up, all I've simply said today is that worship is what brings us into the presence of God. It's what blesses us with his presence. I'm not telling you that it's going to be easy. I'm not telling you that when you're on your job that you need to forget about what you're doing. Because God says, look, in the midst of what you're doing, he says, Matthew 28:18-20, go ye therefore, teach all nations. As you were going, what I need you to do is, I need you to make sure that as you're going, that you take it with you. I need you to make sure that you're thinking about it when you're driving down the street. I need you to know that you are thinking that when you see that man that's on the side of the road that's homeless, I just want to hear sometimes that little silent prayer, because if you was you would hope that somebody was praying for you. Yes. I want you to know, and that's that personal commitment and that shared responsibility that we talked about, because that's what we have to have. A personal commitment and shared responsibility that says, you know what, I'm going to worship God no matter where I am, no matter what I'm going through, no matter what my thought processes are. When I'm at my lowest, I'm still going to worship him. And he says, through worship, we go closer to him. David understood that if he taught the people the importance of how to worship them, their hearts would change. And you know what? He said they just wouldn't show up on Sunday. Okay, I can do this sometimes. We get it on Sunday. And then, next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're a completely different one than the one that we saw on Sunday. He says, you know what? David says, if I teach them about the importance of worshiping everywhere and everywhere we go, he said a couple of things will happen. When we understand what true worship is, we begin to grow stronger in our relationship with God. We realize that it's not about our abilities, it's not about what it is that we bring to the table, but we recognize it's about his strength. David said, I needed them to understand that it's about his strength that's going to endure through these times. Because life wasn't easy during
Yes.
It wasn't easy. He says, I need them to understand that it's about God's strength. Because it's His strength that takes us through the battles. It's His strength that lifts us up when we can't make it. He said, when we begin to focus on Him, He says, when I'm at my lowest, He says, I got somebody who's going to hold me up.
Yeah.
He says, I need them to understand that worship grows us stronger. But what worship also does is worship begins to break up the chains of bondage in our life. We're all bound by something. There's always something that's coming after us or holding us down from being who it is that God has called us to be. You remember Paul and Silas when they were in jail? And it said they were in chains, right? And as they began to pray and worship, the chains fell off, right? And the prison doors began to open up, right? In the midst of our lives, what has to happen is that there's bondage upon our lives. And as we begin to worship Him, those chains begin to fall off. And then we can walk in the freedom that Jesus Christ talked about. He said, who the Son sets free. You want to know why you having issues in your relationships, why you having issues on your job, why you having issues in your mind, why you having issues with your family, why you having issues? It's because you have not begun to worship God and let Him free you.
Yes, glory.
And then lastly, when we begin to worship Him, it teaches us to love God and to love His people.
Yep. Amen.
David, he loved God so much that he made sure that he went to get the presence of God, to bring it into the presence of His people. When we begin to worship God, what will happen is we will take the time out to study what God says, so that we can now begin to teach His people.
Yeah.
Because if He did not bring the presence of God into His people, they would have kept knowing what they were doing. And so He had enough insight that says, I'm going to take the time out, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to read, and I'm going to understand what God requires of me.
Yes.
Because you know what happens? When I do that, other people are blessed. If you come to Bible study to Sunday school on Sundays, you will understand that we've been talking for, I don't know, last 9-10 weeks about the blessing that God made with Abraham when he was Abram. And as a result, he made this commitment to God. And now, 10 weeks now, we're seeing everybody that was blessed because of his obedience.
All right.
Imagine the lives that you can change, the people that you can touch, the minute that you're obedient to God and you begin to worship Him. We want to worship God's way. Let's put aside the things that we've seen and the things that we've heard, and let's do it God's way. Because when we do it God's way, we receive the blessing of God.
Amen.
God bless you. Let us pray.